Two, one, go. Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Kicking the Bucket live stream. My name is Andi Kinsey. That's Andi like Gandhi, but without the G. And I am your host and the creator of the Kicking the Bucket series. So, speaking of the series, these live streams are a companion to our fiction podcast series. We really encourage you to follow the links below, go to our website, go check it out. You're going to laugh, you're going to cry. It has an immersive sound design. We think of it like a TV series for your ears. Would you call it a TV series for your ears, Allison?
Oh,
With
yeah.
the sound design a little bit. So yes, please go check it out. We just had our final Choose Your Own Ending episode yesterday, dropped yesterday. Go give it a listen. So I already said Allison's name. I'm very excited to welcome Allison Ray Benavides to our conversation today. She is a licensed clinical social worker working in hospice care and chronic pain management. So thank you for being here today, Allison.
Hi, Andy. Thanks for having me. It was really fun to get to join you guys last night at the listening event. So thanks for having me back this morning. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, because it's kind of like we're getting to continue that conversation because Allison was our final facilitator at our final listening club. Where our topics today are going to cover a lot of stuff. We're going to perhaps cover a little bit about some rewiring your brain's response to pain, navigating chronic illness through a sacred lens. What exactly does a hospice care worker do? All of this stuff. We're going to try to cover a lot of stuff today. So I'm going to start off with the chat. Welcome to our viewers who are showing up to the stream. If you have any questions, please throw them into the chat questions and we will get to them as soon as possible. Or if you're watching this later, please continue the conversation later on our socials. So for those who were not there last night, Allison, can you give us a quick breakdown again about, tell us a little bit about yourself and your work in chronic pain management and hospice care?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm again, licensed clinical social worker. I'm a medical social worker. So my background is helping people who have something going on with their body cope with their life and their mental health and just all the different ways that that these different parts of our lives interact and spiral, and just being able to show up with the support that folks need in these critical times is kind of my passion. So I really have a deep love for end of life care. And I got into it thinking I'd be there for the patient, and definitely was, but also learned a lot about what families and folks need to support their loved ones in that time of life. So yeah, so I spent like 10 years in hospice care, just absolutely loved it, and then transitioned into private practice in the middle of the pandemic. So I provide telehealth now, and I provide a lot of services to folks who have chronic illness, chronic pain, or who are caregiving. So it's a lot of the same kind of work, but just now more one-on-one as opposed to like in a team context. So that's where I'm coming from.
Perfect. So we were talking beforehand a little bit about, now I'm trying to find it in my questions here because I just lost it. um, we were, let's see. Okay. So how can you, oh, here it is. Okay. So many people don't think, so social work and therapy and all of this, many people don't think about therapy when they're thinking about chronic pain. So we were talking about this word of a biopsychosocial approach. So can you please explain what is biopsychosocial? What does that mean when you're taking that approach to, is it both just chronic pain management, or is it also just end of life care or hospice care as well?
Well, a biopsychosocial approach is really the approach that all social workers take. It's the backbone of our philosophy and approach to life, which is that life is a dynamic. So there's a lot of pieces that are all interacting to create an effect that sometimes in life it's A plus B equals C, right? But often it's A multiplied by D to the square root, right? So we break it into domains, right? So we've got biology, which is where we start with chronic pain, and understandably, right? Like there's something wrong in my body and it's not going away. So we go to the doctor. But what we notice is that in individuals where pain persists, typically there's often there's a component of these other domains playing into it, right? So are there stressors socially going on? Is there a place in your head that's having a hard time reconciling this? And again, because it's all using the nervous system, whether it's chronic physical pain or chronic nausea or itching we talked about, or
Not itching.
fatigue, right? Depression, anxiety, all of that's using the same system. So it's not surprising, right, that when we have one, we're going to have some of the others. And so the work that I do now really helps kind of just flush out all the pieces that are impacting this experience. And there's a lot of hope there, right? Because sometimes we have kind of played out the options in the biological domain, and then we can feel very hopeless. Like, well, what is there for me now? But recognizing that a lot of what's going on is impacted by all of these other factors, then, enter a social worker. I can help you with that. So.
Mm. And so to our viewers, feel free to put questions in the chat. So as a social worker, then what is it that you get to go ahead and bring in and help people with it once you identify their needs? So you have access to resources, or do you also, you can help people narrow it down to what I imagine, since you said everything kind of layers on, you have to pick the one that's screaming the loudest, maybe? Like if it's the environment is screaming louder than the pain itself, or yeah, how do you approach that in terms of determining which it is that's screaming the loudest and where to point people?
In relationship to addressing their chronic pain.
Yeah, I think I'm thinking as how you said, as a social worker, you can help people with all of these other aspects that are coming in that could be affecting their pain or causing the pain,
Mhm.
or contributing to the pain. So there are so many aspects that it could be, right?
Yeah.
How do you narrow down?
Yeah, what I like about, also it's a good fit for me with social work, is that it's a strengths-based model. And so it's really about doing an assessment and assessing not just like what isn't working, but what is working. And not just empowering people with resources, but empowering them with tools that are actually effective. And so whereas a psychodynamic model, and of course all models have their time and place, but in a model that's very like, I'm just going to be more hands off and just ask more guiding questions and let you get there on your own, that can just, increase a sense of helplessness and hopelessness and someone that really just needs solutions now. And so what I like about the pain reprocessing that I do with people is it gives you simple tools that you can do, and my work is to help you integrate those, like it's what we call psychoeducational. So
Okay.
in my sessions I do a lot of talking, and I listen too, but I'm going to teach you a thing, and then we're going to practice that together, and then you can come with your life experiences, and then we can talk about how this model and approach can be applied. So yeah, it's really lovely work because it's very empowering. I'm not here to be an expert. I'm here to pass along some information that I know will help your situation, and how can I help you integrate that. So it's a very educational model that's built on being empowering,
Mhm.
um, and working on just decreasing that fear factor.
Yeah.
Right. So really what we're assessing is where the fear is showing up in your life,
Hmm.
looking at these different domains. because that's ultimately what the body is responding to, right? Going back to that nervous system, trying to keep us like out of danger and in the safe spaces. So the nervous system is always kind of assessing and scanning for that. So I help people work on that rewiring it. How do I help my brain not be so hyper vigilant and always looking for the danger? And now I'm in that negativity bias, and now I'm the Debbie Downer, and I'm the drag in the room, right?
Mhm.
I want to isolate. So it's like all of those things, so I help people, well, how can we roll that back and have a more corrective emotional experience over here, rewiring our brain to lean into more of the experiences that feel safe. And I really liked when you just jumped in with the word sacred, because I feel like that's a really key component. It's like why I loved working in hospice care. We had a chaplain on the team, sometimes that's the presence we need to be the strongest energy in the room, right?
Mhm.
Is that
Mhm.
soft, surrendered. So rewiring the brain to be more like, oh, hey, it's actually okay, even if it's not, right? Noticing the ways the brain will go extra to get our attention. So how can we say, oh, I hear you, but let's take it to a 2, right?
Yeah. Can you help me understand, is it always, I guess, the things that cause fear are right in front of us in the now? Because I imagine a lot of our triggers might be from past experiences, right? So are you getting into past hurts or pains that might be triggering the reaction to the moment? Or are you only focusing on, okay, what can we address in the here and the now?
Yeah, that's such a great question, Andy. It's really both, right? And depending on the client. Um, and I always go back to the question when I'm assessing people, is to your awareness, right? In
Mhm.
your conscious mind, what do we know about how your body learned about fear? And to
Mhm.
me, that's a more significant question, because words like trauma, right, have a lot of like, it kind of means something different. It's to other people, but this is to get down to the root, and I use the example of, I have a bed, right, that's like, how far is a bed off the ground? A couple feet, right? And you put your baby on the bed, right? And the baby's always stayed in the middle of the bed, but dang it, of course, right? You turn for 2 seconds, and that, his little body falls on the ground, right? And no damage done. You pick up the baby crying, and but that baby's body learned something in that free fall, right? Which was
Yeah.
that this is a scary, dangerous feeling. My body feels like it's dying, right? So sometimes people come in and they're like, I don't know why. This is because this is an assessing question. Is there any childhood trauma?
Yeah.
No, I don't. That's okay, because our bodies are designed to have that reaction. Like they're going to learn, right? So it's easier to go someplace in our brain if we've already been there in our brain, right? So depending on just how deep that spiral goes into our internal knowing, you know,
Mhm. Mhm.
that can absolutely impact the degree to which, right? Because the further, right? I used to be a computer programmer, right? So I always use the example of like, like Allison version 1.0, right? And then, right, because every year my nervous system is learning something more. And that's like we're integrating today's experience into the past experiences that my nervous system will use. That's an intrusive thought. When the nervous system's like, hey, don't forget that BS that happened, And you're
Yeah.
like, "What? I'm just like trying to do a thing over here." And your nervous system's like, I know, but this could happen, right? Because it's just going to reference what it knows, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, so the nervous system is kind of like, I always say, to keep us safe today, our nervous system is harvesting past material and projecting it into the future.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
So, but there's kind of always that fish hook effect, and the trick really does become, how do I just bring it? And that's a really important question that you just stumbled into, which is what's actually happening right now, and am
Mhm.
I actually in danger?
Mhm.
Because keep in mind, like when we're getting a danger signal, which is how we come to understand like depression or anxiety or like that, just that inner sense of urgency, that go, 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 go. That's a symptom, right? That's your body saying, we got to get out of here, And so as much as we can just say, well, but do I, like, am I actually in danger?
Yeah. Then what is the thing or the myth, not the myth, the misunderstanding, or not even misunderstanding, just not knowing. What is it, the thing that you most want people to know when they're meeting you for the first time? Like, how you're going to approach, how you're going to kind of bring this into their care?
Excuse me. I feel like when people work with me, they should know that we're going to talk about the body, and we're going to talk about the body as a social worker, right? So nothing I share isn't science based, but I'm not a scientist. I'm actually a writer like yourself, so I'm going to use a lot of metaphor, and I find that helps people get a handle on information. Like, we want to know we're doing the right thing and it's science based, but science, like, come on, like I can't go there. So I think my approach is to be really like, just know that I'm going to talk to you and give you information about your body so that we can start to unblend, like start to learn to take the body not so personally, to not identify with it, because that's a key part of reprogramming it. When we can say, oh, that's my body doing a thing, that's not me being ridiculous,
Mm-hmm.
So that's
and when you say not so personally, because I know we were talking before about before the live stream about how your body is sending you all of these signals and that you need to listen to it more. So I'm trying to imagine how I take it personally. Okay, so something happens in my body. I'm like, oh, you're just getting so old. Why are you getting so old? Why are you doing this to me? But don't think of it that way. Think of it as, what are you telling me when my part of my back over here hurts? Is that what you're saying that you're getting into with your clients?
yeah, it's really kind of just like breaking down. We talk about like what's going on in our thoughts and what's going on in our body.
Okay.
And noticing those are like two places for intervention. So when you notice that you're having negative self-talk, instead of like, so identifying with that thought would be, like my brain is running that track, it's running that loop of some version of I'm not enough, right? And so, am I now weeping because I can feel it in my heart and solar plexus because I've been told that a lot in my life, or at least it's felt that way a lot in my life? It's just breaking down how can we nurture that feeling in our body as opposed to buying into the story. Because when we buy into the story, it's going to just like reinforce the story and make it worse. And it's not true. And it's actually a feature of the panic, right?
Yeah. So instead of, oh, your back is hurting because you didn't exercise and you never exercise and you're overweight and all of that, you're trying to separate those thoughts from, okay, let's focus on the hurt. Where is it radiating from? Where it is causing it? We're separating those two thoughts.
Yeah, because notice what you said, right? Never. Like I pinged that word never. Right? And so you learn to, like, so what I do is help people to catch, well, you just used never. So based on this model, we're going to immediately put that statement in, we're going to question that statement. It's probably not true.
Yeah.
And then it's interesting to note the brain will be like, yes, it is. Yes, it is. And we're like, it's not. So noticing that those like fierce attachments to that kind of like hypercritical, unkind energy. It's a mechanism in the brain that's like designed to be helpful, but it kind of in its own amplification turns in on itself, and it ends up shooting us in the foot, right? Because now we're not doing the thing. So yeah, so it's like working with people to yeah, go ahead.
Well, could you give us the breakdown again of like how like you feel the pain and the path it takes to your brain and what your brain is doing? Because you started that before, and I like I feel the pain and it's sending this signal to here, and then this
Oh,
happens. Yeah.
oh yeah. Yeah, one of I think one of the most compelling pieces of research that I read in getting into chronic pain psychology was they took this group of individuals, right, who'd broken their arms, and they did all these scans, and they observed, as expected, right, that the arm was broken and the sensation was coming from here, and then it was going up into the brain that was generalizing out all the different messages it needed, right? Which is what we would expect to see, right? Like this hurts because this is broken. So the messages are starting here. And then they came back a year later, and for people who still had pain, they scanned their brains and expected to see the same course, the same mechanism. But what they found was the opposite, was that the messages were coming from the brain that were causing the symptoms, right? And so
Our
what that
stories are taking over.
again,
Our brain is taking over the pain and hijacking it and saying, okay, which is where your methods come in of the what you said, the neuro something approach. And then what can you tell me that word again? And then also the methods that you're using, because that is what we're trying to break, right? That now the brain is controlling stuff, so we're trying to stop the brain from controlling it so much.
yeah, we talk about this like pain fear cycle
Mhm.
that the brain will get stuck in. And it really, I think I used like the analogy of a cache system for your browser, like
Yeah.
once a browser's going to remember it, right? So that it can just pull, it's like more efficient, right? And so the memory system is very much tied to chronic pain. And again, it's kind of these ways that the brain thinks it's like helping us out, but it's kind of shooting us in the foot. So it's kind of like, oh, I'm just gonna, I remember that sensation, so I'm just gonna send it there. And so it gets confusing because the sensations are real. Like no one is saying that the pain isn't real, and of course you're feeling it here. It's just a matter of like how much do we need like physical therapy, and how much do we just need to remind our brain that we're not back here, right back in that fish hook. you know
Mhm.
you don't need
Mhm.
to continue to warn me. I don't need any more danger signals. I don't need to be warned not to use my hand anymore. I'm past that, right? So a lot of my work is getting these different domains more aligned, you
Mhm.
know
Yeah.
hmm
And how does this translate into um end of life?
yeah.
So, last night we were talking about Dolores and Howard having very typical reactions for what happens at the end of life. So, when you're battling the mind, the here, the now, like what are you doing when you're battling all of this at a person's end of life?
Again, the first thing we do is we show up with presence and dignity, and
Mhm.
that's my favorite piece of hospice care, is we show up in the room as that stronger presence, so that people can um, unguard. They don't need to be guarded because we're here. And
Mhm.
that's a lot of what we're doing in chronic pain management, is helping people unguard, right?
And
We
by
also
unguard, do you mean you're kind of stopping the fear, that panic? the
Yeah, exactly.
anxiety?
Yeah, the I have to, like, hold it all together. I have to be the strong one that, like, I
Mhm.
have to push through, that fear, right, can really, drive, you know?
Yeah.
So, so we show up, we're the experts in the room, we have that presence. And then again, we have that education, we have the materials, we're available. So just making that presence available.
Mhm.
Um, and a lot of what we're managing in both our clients, or excuse me, in our patients and our caregivers is anxiety. And
Mhm.
so I just, as a hospice worker, that felt really near and dear to my heart was providing education specifically to that trajectory, you know, from irritation to restlessness, all the way up to, you know, panic and terminal agitation, because it is a major symptom at end of life that people are not that aware of. And so, as much as I can help caregivers manage their anxiety and recognize that it's a symptom that needs to be managed,
Mhm.
to provide a dignified, painless passing. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I feel like it's just a misunderstood symptom, and it just always feels really good to get to relay that education because it can be so sudden and devastating in its extremity. So
Mhm. Am I right in thinking that you are coming into people's spaces and lives with a little bit of time? Like you have, I don't know, weeks, or are you sometimes coming into this space the day of, like where you don't even have time to help prepare? And so you're just there being calm. Yeah, what it was it is it typically you have a little bit more time to help people learn how to manage it for themselves, or are you coming in at the last minute?
that's a really great point, Andy, because we hospice care, and of course, keep in mind we're guessing, right? So it's a service that we say we will provide for 6 months.
Okay.
And I know it's scary because it can be this accepting that, wow, I'm at the last 6 months. But that said, you know, depending on how symptoms continue to evolve, I've had clients or patients for 3 years before. And so, you know, my encouragement is always, you know, it doesn't hurt to be assessed. You don't need a referral. You know, your general practitioner doesn't need to refer you. You know, you can call them, they'll come out, they'll tell you if you qualify or not. You know, if
Mhm.
you don't, they're medically, you know, they can't accept you. So but that said, there's a lot of benefit to having more time with the team. I I believe, you know. But that said, I was constantly reminded by my trainer that, you know, people die every day without it. So, you know, I think it's really personal, like when that time is. But
Mhm.
yeah, you know, we did see trends, right? Alzheimer's is a really slow progression. Often we would kick people off with Alzheimer's and then put them back on years later. But yeah, but then folks with cancer tend to be fighting it, right? So it wasn't uncommon to get someone with cancer who passed within days. So, but I like people to know that, yeah, we're it's a service that's really for the caregiver, you know,
Mhm. Mhm.
and so to also kind of broaden who it's for, you know.
I think that is one of the misunderstandings about it, right? Because I think of hospice or being the last thing, right? That's the last stand. And I didn't realize until even like doing this with the listening club and the series that it can be a longer thing, and you can get this team around you. And the caregivers need just as much support as the people who are transitioning themselves. So, of course, we could talk forever, but we're running out of time. So, do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share with people about what it is that you do, about misunderstandings, anything, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think my final thought would be that as scary and as unknown as it is, it's much simpler than it feels. And so if we can just show up with just simple curiosity and presence, it can really just be that simple. It really can be a time of less doing. And I think that that's really one of the gifts of hospice care, right? Is that we're already at the big emergency. Here we are, and there's a grace and a relief in that. And so to just let that be okay, to not get too caught up in that I don't know what to do, that really just being present is huge, because people aren't, for their own reasons. I don't judge, whatever. But to be a person in the room at a time that is so intimate and so scary, I think is a really special time, and it's an important time. And so we don't need to make it harder than it is. Just be there.
Thank you so much, Allison, for being here today. If people want to get in contact you, are they following that link that we have across the bottom of the screen to chronicpaincounseling.com?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So if you want to get in touch with Allison, please visit her link below. And then also please visit the Kicking the Bucket website as well to hear more about the podcast. We're taking next week off, but we're returning on September 4th with Jinji Willingham, a licensed professional counselor and Buddhist chaplain. So again, thank you, Allison.
Thank you so much.
Okay, we're